Now really delighted to actually kick off in a minute our last presentation of the day, which will be with Race Oncology. For anyone new that's just arrived into the room, thanks very much for coming along. And as a reminder, we're speaking on the topic of addressing the need for change. So I'd now like to introduce Mr. Phillip Lynch, who's CEO and Managing Director of Race, and Dr. Daniel Tillett, who's CSO and Executive Director. Race, if you need an intro, is a precision oncology company with a phase 2/3 cancer drug called Zantrene, a potential inhibitor of the Fatso, or fat mass and obesity associated protein, or FTO. Overexpression of FTO has been shown to be the genetic driver of a diverse range of cancers. Now, just a bit on our speakers. So Phil is an experienced board director with a diverse background across corporate development, strategy, financial performance, marketing, and governance. And Daniel has more than 20 years of commercial experience in the biotech industry, in project management, sales and marketing, IP management, fundraising, and startup investing. He's also the founder and CEO of Nucleix, a private Australian biotechnology company, producing and selling world-leading DNA sequencing software to the genomics industry. Phil and Daniel are very capably co-leading Race through what I think is a very exciting corporate strategy, which is called the 3-pillar strategy. And incredibly, Race right now finds itself at the epicenter of a fast evolving patient need. So with that, I might hand over to you, Phil, ask you to start screen sharing and to kick us off. Thank you.
Jane, thanks for that introduction, and welcome to participants. And I look forward to talking about Race Oncology and Zantrene and how we're prosecuting a significant opportunity in FTO, which Jane touched on. I'll give you an overview of, and Daniel will talk to in more detail. I wanted to start with, frankly, what's really important for all of us, no doubt, is that, the good news is cancer survival rates are improving. And the graph here shows you 5-year survival rates over time. They're getting better. But I think you would agree, no doubt through your own experience, no doubt family, friends, we all know people touched by cancer. It's a significant disease, it's a significant market, but what's important is our ability to progress survival rates is going to make a big difference. And that's why the work that we do is important. If you look at the evolution of oncology, and frankly, medicine more broadly, I think this chart is a good characterization of what's happening. On the left, you see broadly the history, the one-size medicine, probably best characterized by thinking about perhaps chemotherapeutics. And you look on the right, and there's a progression towards more precision medical applications, effectively the delivery of medicine to an individual that directly suits their specific cancer diagnosis. And of course, diagnosis, we could talk much more on because that's very much a part of this progress. But what's important is that precision drugs are making a big difference and will continue to. Of course, what's exciting and what we'll talk about today in detail is Zantrene. Zantrene is our precision oncology drug. And what's exciting is that it is, and it's being confirmed by the City of Hope in June 2020, the most potent known inhibitor of the fat mass and obesity associated protein. And we'll keep referring to that as FTO going forward. That highlight or that finding is being replicated by the University of Chicago in another paper published a little later, and that's just shown to you on the right there. But what's important to think about FTO is that FTO is not existing in one cancer. Frankly, we've identified, or rather researchers have identified, that it exists in as many as 25 cancers at this time. So most every cancer. It's a driver of cancer progress. So therefore, our ability to inhibit the protein, the FTO protein, therefore can make a big difference potentially in cancer treatment. Uniquely also, but importantly, a lot of cancer treatments you may know struggle in efficacy because of what's called treatment resistance. And we're increasingly learning that our drug, and other drugs for that matter, can work adjunctively in addressing treatment resistance. And Zantrene's ability to do that means it's particularly exciting. So there's a quote there from Zantrene Chen, who's on our advisory board, quoting that Zantrene, when he tested it, and he referred to it as CS1 in his paper, is at least 10 times more effective in killing cancer cells than previously reported FTO inhibitors. So we're sitting on a very large opportunity, and we're very excited to go after that. So much so that we evolved our strategy late last year. I know many of you know us well, and we're talking to those who perhaps understand this, but there are some new, no doubt, participants on today. So I'll simply highlight that we've got a 3-pillar strategy, but today we'll focus on what we call the transformative runway opportunity, which is our prosecution of the FTO opportunity. We call it Pillar 1. And for the rest of this short presentation, I'll have Daniel take us through that in detail so you can understand why it's such a big opportunity. Daniel.
Yep, I'm on mute. Thank you, Phil. So why is FTO such an exciting opportunity, and why has there been so much interest from the cancer research community, both clinically and preclinically? And the reason why is it lies right in the middle of a key driver of cancer, not only the development and growth of cancer, but also the resistance of cancer to treatment from other activities. So there's a complicated slide there to the left, which shows all the components, or it actually shows only a limited subset of the components that are involved in this pathway. And this pathway is super important for determining which genes get turned into proteins inside the cell, and it acts as a global regulator. And right in the middle of this pathway lies FTO, which is involved in demethylating, removing the methyl groups from the RNA, which then affects their translation. The thing that makes it exciting from a treatment perspective for patients is that it's found to be important in a wide range of cancers, in all the majors: leukemia, breast, lung, ovarian, gastric, brain, melanoma, pancreatic. There hasn't yet been a cancer that someone's looked at where it hasn't actually been important, at least in a subset. And this has meant that it's become one of the hottest areas in cancer research. And you can see there on the bottom of the right-hand side of the slide, the growth in publications that have identified this M6A RNA pathway. And it's only in the last couple of years that it's really taken off and become a really exciting opportunity. Why is it such a great opportunity for us? Well, gives you an overview here visually of what I've just said, in that it's across all the major cancers: lung cancer, leukemias, things like kidney cancer, melanoma, osteosarcomas, all the different sorts of cancers out there. FTO plays a role in a subset of those. This makes it, from the perspective of a commercial perspective, and also from the perspective of making a maximum impact on patients' outcome, is it opens up the opportunity to work in a wide range of different cancers. So one of the problems of precision oncology is that many of the agents are very tightly targeted to only one type of cancer or one subtype of one type of cancer, making it difficult to both commercialize and make a major impact on this terrible disease, cancer. And we happen to be blessed with an opportunity here that's very unlike any other that are out there. So the other big thing that makes, not only is it widely spread across a wide range of different cancers, it's also known to be complementary or synergistic with current treatment options, particularly the anti-PD-1 immune checkpoint inhibitors. Obviously an amazing breakthrough that's come in the last 10 years or so, and it has been shown that FTO inhibition is involved in overcoming resistance to the checkpoint inhibitors, and it's also been shown preclinically in mice that bisantrene or Zantrene actually overcomes that as well. So really quite an amazing opportunity there. Also, Zantrene's been shown for AML, the other orange thing, with hypermethylating agents. But in general, FTO inhibitors have been shown to be important with a whole range of really unrelated different cancer treatment options at overcoming the resistance. And so you have the ability to take a treatment that had either not worked or in a particular patient, or had worked and the patient developed resistance, and overcome that resistance and make that agent then work again. Something that's obviously what we were all interested in achieving. Next slide, Phil. So we've decided to focus on, obviously we have a wealth of opportunities there. We could pretty much pick any cancer we liked, And we were then faced with the task of which ones do we focus on as a proof of concept. And we chose two, melanoma and clear cell renal carcinoma. The reason why melanoma is such an attractive opportunity, apart from the fact that it's still a terrible disease, and one that many Australians are familiar with, is that about half of all metastatic melanomas overexpress FTO. So it has that opportunity there. On top of that, it's been shown that overexpression of FTO causes resistance to the checkpoint inhibitor drugs like PD-1. And this is a major problem. Whilst these drugs have made a huge impact for melanoma, about between 40 to 60% of patients don't respond to those drugs, and there's need for improvements along those ones. And even more importantly, down-regulation of FTO has been shown to overcome that resistance. So not only is it causing the resistance, if you disrupt FTO, which Zantrene can do, you can overcome that resistance. So this is an amazing opportunity. We're exploring that currently preclinically, and we'll be reporting an update on the progress of this work shortly. Next slide, Phil. The other target that we've gone after is clear cell renal cell carcinoma. This is a kidney cancer, not very well known, but particularly nasty in that you often don't have any symptoms of this cancer until it's metastasized around the body and it's too late. Unfortunately, it has an unusual name. It's actually the 10th most common cancer overall. So the overall survival rates are not as good as Phil showed initially on the first slide, and they're still down around 12%. So there's a real need for improved treatments for this particular cancer. What makes it interesting from the perspective of race and from the perspective of FTO is that 90% of these cancers are driven by a mutation in another gene called the von Hippel-Lindau gene. It's a tumor suppressor gene. You have an inherited mutation in that gene, and then that causes the cancer to develop. And what's become exciting is that a study out of Stanford did a screen where they looked for what other genes in the human body are essential for maintaining a cancer cell, the renal cell cancer cell, in the presence of a mutated VHL gene. And it turns out FTO was the case. And what this means is, in the absence of FTO, the cell dies. It already has one mutation in this VHL gene, and if it gets a second inactivation of the FTO protein, then the cell's no longer able to survive. And so this allows us to have the opportunity to target directly 90% of the clear cell renal cell carcinoma cancers. On top of this is preclinical work in mice. If we look back through the historical phase 1 data that we have for bisantrene, very early low doses were given to patients that happened to have kidney cancer, and they showed remarkable response to Zantrene at a dose that had basically no side effects. So it's a very exciting opportunity. Not only do we have preclinical data to explain why it worked, we actually also have clinical data that showed that it actually did work, which is in patients. So this is a really super exciting opportunity. So what do we have to look forward to? I might hand this back to Phil and let us take it through to the remain.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, for helping us to understand why FTO is such a big opportunity for Zantrene. We have already announced that we're working on preclinical programs in melanoma, clear cell renal cell carcinoma, the extramedullary AML, and we'll have updates that are due at an interim level in 21, and towards the end of the year, final reports on those programs. So they're progressing positively, notwithstanding, of course, there's some challenges in executing some work around Australia at the moment, given lockdowns. We've also got updates on clinical trials. You would be aware, or some of you would be aware, we have an AML trial underway in Israel. It's a phase 2 trial where our drug is in combination with 2 others, and we're actually progressing an extramedullary AML trial in Australia that's currently in investigation. So we'll have news on that later this year. So we're being very busy. The team continues to work hard, and we look forward to updating you all shortly on that. Of course, in 22, we'll be giving you final results of those clinical programs, but equally a more detailed plan around our clinical programs to capitalise on those opportunities. We've got limited time, and we're going to give you that time back as regards questions. But of course, I did want to say in conclusion, our Race Oncology and the team are very excited and prosecuting aggressively the FTO opportunity. It's a big opportunity, and we intend to go after it in every way possible. But equally, as a business, we're cognizant that, that has some risk. We've got to get through certain gates to do that, but we'll make sure we do that optimally. And we think that in balance, the opportunity for our company and for shareholders balances appropriately the risk that we're taking. You've got a very small, capable team. We work globally with the appropriate partners, and we do so in a way that minimises costs, but gives us access to the appropriate resources. And I would always say that we're shareholder focused. We're careful about how we invest your money, and we're working hard to make sure that we can generate returns that ultimately will benefit patients, but shareholders would equally benefit from that focus. I'll pause now and hand over to questions, and we'll balance them between Daniel and myself where appropriate. Jane, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much for the great update, guys. Okay, so let's kick off with one that relates to some news of the last month or so. So the drug name has changed from bisantrene to Zantrene recently. So can you just talk to why the change?
Yeah, I'll take that. Well, firstly, the drug name hasn't changed. It was always a registered trademark, Zantrene. I think what's changed is that we have made a decision that it's appropriate for us to refer to it as its trademark name, the trademark we own. So it's the same drug, but we'll be continuing to refer to it as Zantrene.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, quite a few questions here around partnering. So I'll sort of try to wrap them up into one. So given the current developments in the industry, is it felt that a partnership with major pharma rather than a takeover by major pharma is likely to occur? If you can just talk to the strategy.
Well, I'll give you a view, and Daniel may want to complement that view. I mean, if you look at how pharma operates, and I'll use the example of my former company, half of the money they invest in R&D they do internally, and half of it they do externally. And the external part includes making investments in early stage companies, it includes partnerships, licenses, and the like. So we're a candidate, frankly, at any time for partnership or license. And I know the question, or the nuance of the question, includes, well, would that happen ahead of an acquisition? And the possibility is always yes, it's highly possible, but it's ultimately going to be driven by, by data. I mean, the more data we have and the more data we generate, the more visible we will become. So as that data evolves, I think the prospects and the possibilities for that will change.
Daniel?
I would just add that all of this is driven by data. Partnerships and takeover are driven by the quality of data, particularly clinical data, but preclinical data as well. The more data and the higher quality data that we can generate, and the more opportunities, it changes. But ultimately, it comes down to it's the end goal, which is a transaction. How we get there is we'll take the best opportunity to get there. We're all significant. I'm the largest shareholder in the company. The whole board is significantly invested in the company, and we're focused on an outcome for the shareholders, not an outcome for our back pocket via our salaries.
Thanks, Daniel. And so there are a couple of questions here just around timing for partnering discussions as well. And I guess you've kind of answered that in terms of data driving those discussions.
There's no point going and talking to a new company about a partnering opportunity until you have data to have that discussion. Otherwise, they'll just go, thank you very much. That was very interesting. Come back in 6 months' time. So our job is to generate that data that makes those conversations real. And we're on track to do that.
Great. Okay. Once again, a few questions on a similar topic. So I'm going to combine two because I quite like the start of one, which was, apart from access to the barber, how much... how much of an impact have the New South Wales and Victorian lockdowns created for news? And sort of related questions just around what can we expect in terms of, next steps with data announcements.
We previously announced to the market that we'll be making an announcement before the end of the quarter, and we will, interim. Obviously, COVID is a problem we all have to live with, particularly here in New South Wales. We've been in lockdown now for, 3 months, and it's affected everyone here. We've been able to work around it in some ways, and some of the work was accomplished before we went into lockdown, and some of it's been able to be completed. But yeah, there will be significant announcements made coming up, as we've indicated already to the market.
Thanks, Daniel. Okay, now this might be one for you as well. So how can overexpression of FTO be identified in cancer patients?
Yeah, that's a price-sensitive question, major focus of what we're doing, and there's multiple ways of achieving that outcome. So the answer is it's something that's well recognised within precision oncology, is that you need to be able to identify those patients who will benefit from a precision drug. It's no point having a precision drug that you then just give willy-nilly to everyone. So the idea is we make sure we identify the patients that best respond to a particular drug and only provide the drug to those patients. So and everyone benefits from that. When you're a cancer patient, you can only get so many treatments before it's too late. And you need to make sure that those treatments that you get really make a difference.
Thank you. Okay, so perhaps another one for you, Daniel, just on, do you have many other competitors that are also able to show a reduction in FTO activity?
There are other companies out there that have got preclinical drugs. We happen to have the best in the class by quite a long way. So the next nearest competitor is only a third as potent as our drug, and it's totally preclinical. Hasn't yet gone into the clinic, where we've got a drug that's gone all the way through to approval. So that significantly de-risks the clinical, the problems that can occur in the clinic with toxicology, delivery, all these things that can happen with a drug. So the likelihood of a drug going from discovery all the way through to an approved drug is about 1 in 10,000. So we've basically been able to bypass most of that risk purely because of our historical data, which is a great opportunity. It's certainly what attracted me to the company when I came and invested initially, was the historical data. It takes away a lot of clinical risk.
Very good. Okay, just a reminder, if anybody wants to ask a question, please use the Q&A function in the bottom of the Zoom ribbon. We've got a few more minutes for questions. I've got a few here. So you mentioned, Phil, a small but capable team, but also note that you've made a few appointments this year, including a CMO and principal scientist. How are those new hires working with the team, and how do you see the team evolving from here?
Yeah, I'm going to say they're working particularly well. They're great hires. If you want to have a look at the announcements on their appointment, they're both highly talented, capable individuals. So David Fuller, our CMO, brings significant clinical experience in oncology. He has that experience over many decades right across Asia. And he's already had a significant mark on our clinical program development. So I'm probably stating what you'd expect me to say, but equally, Mike, who joined us from University of Wollongong, again, if you look at Mike's resume, significant background, and we're privileged and lucky to have Mike join us. So as a group, we've really got the capability as a small group to determine what we do and how we do it. But equally, we know what we don't know, so we know where to go and get the answers when we need it. So there's nothing wrong with being small. We're very capable and able to go and get the answers we need, and the team is gelling particularly well.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, thanks everyone for submitting the rush of extra questions. So we've got a bunch to get on with now. So one here just on the scientific advisory board. So specifically, how often would you be in contact with Dr. Chen?
It's probably a price-sensitive question, so I might pass on that one. So we are in contact with Professor Chen, and I think some of our shareholders have noticed that he's noted that he's a member of the Scientific Advisory Board and his updated publications. he's making good progress, I think, in his area, and he's certainly somebody who's highly committed to ensuring that Zantrene progresses to the clinic and makes a difference. He's a true believer in the drug.
Excellent. Thanks, Daniel. We'll let you get away with that. So next one here, it's a good question, actually. How valuable is the historical clinical data for Zantrene?
From my perspective, it's incredibly valuable. It's the cost of replicating that would be in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars to run equivalent trials today. But where it's so valuable is it allows us to accelerate even though we're doing clinical trials in new areas and new combinations, just knowing all this sort of historical data allows us to basically get straight to the right point very quickly. So we know the toxicities, we know what to look for, we know the dosing, we know how to dose. All those things you have to generally figure out on your own. It's a slow process. We can bypass all of that and move straight forward. So it gives us a lot of confidence when we actually undertake a trial that we know what's going to happen. So yeah, you get that all for free effectively.
Very good. Okay. And follow-on question here. So to an earlier question, actually, how many months or years do you think your advantage is over competitors?
That's a difficult question to answer because some of our competitors are what are called stealth companies. They're private. They don't release anything what they're up to. We know that nobody has an FTO inhibitor or any drug in the M6A pathway in the clinic currently, or is even proposing to go into the clinic. So you can see all of that through the clinicaltrials.gov site. And currently, so we're the leading company in this space. It's our intention to remain the leading company in this space and accelerate forward and use our historical data to allow us to do that. So we're not only the best, we're the first as well. So first in class, best in class is the nice little tag for that.
Very good. Okay. This one might be hard to answer, but how quickly do you expect Zantrene to cause a measurable response in tumour size?
It depends on the cancer. So for example, in AML, you'll get a response within a month. In other cancers, it's a slower process. So slower growing cancers usually take longer to respond. And particularly the immunological ones can often take months after treatment. So if you're overcoming resistance to the checkpoint inhibitors, the immune, they can often take, it might be 3 months before the patient responds, and suddenly, nothing's happening, and then suddenly, boom, the cancer goes away because the immune system's woken up and gone after the cancer. So yeah, it just depends. Unfortunately, everything in cancer it depends. Every cancer is unique. Every patient is unique, and the results, that's what makes it such a hard problem. It's not like, I don't know, an antibiotic or something like this. It's you're dealing with a bacteria, you're dealing with something that a unique organism basically every time.
For sure. Okay. All right. So question here on the side effect profile of Zantrene. Can you just talk to that?
Yes, it has a side effect. It has a side effect at high dose, which is similar to the anthracyclines. At the doses that we intend to use it for FTO, we know from the phase 1 data it has no side effects. And that was seen also with Professor Chen's animal work, where he didn't see any effect at the dose that it needs to be used. That's a very, very low dose, about a 20th the dose that you need to cause this chemotherapeutic effect. So yeah, it's very unusual in that I expect that, of course, when you go into the clinic, you'll see some side effects, but it looks very safe. We already know it's safe at that level, and it can have a response in the clinic at that level because from the historical data. So some of the patients responded at low doses that didn't cause any side effects. The typical first side effect is myelosuppression, which is your bone marrow, white blood cells drop. That's the first typical when you increase the dose.
Right, got it. Okay, thank you. We are at time, so I might just ask 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up to leave people to get on with their days. So a related question is, what are your plans to share trial results via papers, presentations, etc., with the scientific community?
I might punt that one to Phil because he hasn't been saying very much for a while.
Well, I'm normally skipping the scientific stuff, but what I can say is that our preclinical programs will publish the results, will update and give everybody visibility on them as they arrive. As we're running clinical trials, I mentioned before, one out of Israel and one proposed in Australia, which is the EMD AML trial. They're open label trials, which gives us the opportunity, and we will update results as we release appropriate patient numbers and the data from those patients. So that'll be, again, freely shared. I think that answers the question.
Very good. Okay, thank you. And one last administrative kind of question for you, I guess, Phil. So will the AGM still be held in Ipswich, Queensland?
I think I'm aware of that proposal.
I'm even aware of who that shareholder might be.
Yeah. Well, we will be virtually available for those in Ipswich. So, and everybody else online. We'll be publishing likely next week the date of our AGM and details on how you can join us. So look forward to that and to giving you all an opportunity to share more.
Excellent. And Ipswich, no doubt, is a lovely place for an AGM. We'll consider that in the future. All right.
Anywhere other than Sydney would be a lovely place.
Yeah.
Just to be able to get out of the house.
For sure. Okay. Well, thank you, Phil and Daniel, for speaking today. Really appreciate you making time.